It really hit me recently. When we talk about global trade, you think cars, you think electronics, but like the actual ships that move all that stuff.
Right.
It's a whole huge industry in itself.
Yeah, for sure.
And right now, one country absolutely dominates that industry. China.
Yeah.
A staggering, hit this, 58.1% of all new ship orders in 2024.
Wow.
That's insane.
It really is.
So that's kind of what got me thinking, like, how did we get here?
Right.
What about other major shipbuilding nations, like South Korea,
Yeah.
India? What are their stories?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today. When
Yeah.
you look at the timelines of shipbuilding in Korea, China, and India,
Okay.
you're really looking at like a microcosm of global economic shifts, technological development, strategic priorities, all playing out on the high seas.
Really?
Each country's journey offers some unique insights into what it takes to become, a shipbuilding powerhouse.
So that's our mission today. We're going to chart those courses, right?
Yeah.
We've got analyses looking at the current market. We're going to look back at Korea's almost unbelievable rise.
It is incredible, yeah.
And we're going to get a clear picture of where India stands right now.
Okay.
Highlight its potential, the obstacles that it faces.
Yeah.
So by the end of this deep dive, you'll have a clearer understanding of where each of these countries stands historically and in the present.
Right.
It'll be like your shortcut to understanding a vital
Yeah.
but often overlooked aspect of global trade
For sure.
and geopolitics.
That's right.
And what's so fascinating to me
Yeah.
is the contrast, right?
Yeah.
You have Korea, this nation that's completely transformed itself, like rapidly,
Yeah.
through strategic alliances and industrial policy. You have China, this more recent, but just massive surge to dominance.
Right.
And then you have India trying to find its footing
Right.
in a whole different world, really.
A different landscape, yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
So let's start with Korea.
Okay.
Because their shipbuilding roots go way back,
They do, yeah.
like way back.
A long history there.
Yeah.
Korea has this rich maritime heritage stretching back centuries,
Okay.
back to the Chosun dynasty, which lasted, by the way, for 5 centuries.
Wow. Okay.
They maintained a really strong navy.
I see.
And you can understand why, geographically,
Yeah.
the peninsula is surrounded by seas.
Right.
Interacting with their neighbors, naval force was essential,
Makes sense.
both for security and trade.
So they weren't just building fishing boats, right?
Not at all.
I remember reading about the turtle ship.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds pretty advanced.
It was revolutionary for its time.
Okay.
Turtle ship with its ironclad plating, unique design.
Yeah.
It was a really formidable fighting vessel.
I see.
This shipbuilding prowess was a big reason for some significant victories.
Like,
The Battle of Myeongnyang
okay.
back in 1597.
Wow. Okay.
A smaller Korean fleet led by Admiral Yi Sun-sin
Wow.
defeated a much larger Japanese invasion fleet.
Oh, wow.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
It really shows shipbuilding has always been strategically important for Korea.
Right.
They also built, transport vessels
Okay.
capable of carrying large amounts of cargo for that era.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So long history. But then fast forward to after World War II,
Right.
totally different picture.
Yeah, things had changed.
Right. I mean, Korea wasn't the shipbuilding giant we know today.
Right. Not yet. So what happened?
Well, after World War II and the period of Japanese colonial rule, the Korean government,
Right.
they took control of the leftover shipbuilding facilities
Okay.
and equipment that had been previously monopolized by Japanese companies.
I see.
This led to the establishment of the Korea Shipbuilding and Engineering Corporation, KSEC,
KSEC. Okay.
in Busan.
Got it.
Their initial focus was on rebuilding.
And transitioning from, wooden ships to steel ship construction in the 1960s. They made steady progress, increased their tonnage output,
Yeah.
but they were far from a dominant force globally. And interestingly, KSEC eventually went bankrupt,
Really?
which in a way created an opportunity
Right.
for the next phase of Korean shipbuilding.
Right.
So then you have this next phase,
Yeah.
and it really kicks off with Hyundai in the 1970s.
Okay.
This is a real turning point.
It is. It is.
Enter Chung Ju-young,
Yeah.
the very ambitious founder of the Hyundai Group.
Right. Right.
Hyundai was already a major chaebol at this time.
Right. And for our listeners who might not know,
Yeah.
chaebol are large family-controlled business conglomerates in South Korea.
Right.
And they have like fingers in every pie.
Oh, yeah. They're in everything from automobiles to construction, you name it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a key feature of the South Korean economy.
Okay.
So Chung, he initially planned to build a few medium-sized shipyards, but then he had this incredibly audacious vision.
Okay, what was that?
To build one massive, super large shipyard in Ulsan with 1 million ton capacity.
Wow.
Just huge.
Okay.
And here's the really bold part.
Yeah.
Before the Ulsan shipyard was even finished, Hyundai Heavy Industries won an order for 2 very large crude carriers, or VLCCs.
And VLCCs, for our listeners who aren't deeply familiar with the shipping world, these are massive ships designed to transport huge quantities of oil.
Right, crude oil, yeah.
Okay, so who ordered these ships?
This order came from a Greek shipping magnate who wanted these ships to be identical to one that had just been built by a Scottish firm, Scott Lithgow. To save time, Hyundai decided to do something that seems almost impossible.
What was that?
Build the massive shipyard and these 2 giant ships at the same time.
Oh.
Like simultaneously.
That sounds kind of like trying to perform major surgery while you're building the operating room.
It's a great analogy.
Like, how did they even start?
Yeah, I mean, they needed a lot of help.
Right.
Yeah, Hyundai, they actively sought international expertise. Initially, they approached Japanese and Norwegian companies for joint ventures. But those discussions fell apart.
Oh, why?
The Japanese especially were hesitant to give away their advanced shipbuilding techniques to a potential competitor.
Makes sense.
Like South Korea. They also explored a licensing agreement with a West German firm, but that fell through because of the cost. So finally, they turned to the United Kingdom, and they found a partner in A&P Appledore, which was a Scottish naval architecture firm.
So it was the Scots who really helped Korea get started.
In a very big way, yes.
Wow.
Appledore, they agreed to train Hyundai in designing and operating a large-scale shipyard. They even gave them the initial yard layout plans and shared some crucial shipbuilding drawings.
Wow.
But for those 2 crude carriers, Appledore helped Hyundai get access to Scott Lithgow themselves.
Oh, interesting.
The very company whose ship the Greek tycoon wanted to copy. Hyundai basically used Scott Lithgow's design blueprints, sourced a lot of the same European suppliers, used similar raw materials.
So they basically just, like, copied their homework.
Kinda, yeah.
Wow.
They even sent a bunch of Korean engineers to Scotland for training,
Interesting.
who then sent back vital information to help build the Ulsan shipyard.
Wow, so it's kind of a bittersweet story for the Scots, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Like they helped create their own competition.
Exactly.
I read that Scott Lithgow, director at the time, kind of knew this was happening.
Yeah, he had a feeling.
Like that they were contributing to their own eventual decline.
Yeah. You know, hindsight's 20/20.
But this collaboration with the Scottish actually opened the door for some cooperation with the Japanese, right?
It did.
I mean, they couldn't just ignore this.
Right. They realized they might be losing out on business opportunities by shutting Korea out completely. So Kawasaki Shipbuilding, they eventually agreed to share some of their work procedures.
Wow.
It was a big shift.
It really was.
Yeah.
Even with all that help,
Yeah.
it wasn't a completely smooth start for Hyundai, was it?
No, not at all.
I remember reading about the 2 halves of their first ship.
Oh, yeah, the Atlantic Baron?
Right, not fitting together.
It's true. They had some issues.
Yeah, what happened?
Well, trying to build these enormous vessels while also building the shipyard itself, yeah, that presented some big challenges. Then they tried to join the 2 massive hull sections. They didn't align perfectly.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so they had to create a whole new design office to really closely monitor the construction process.
Wow.
But these setbacks led to delays in the ship's delivery. And then, just as they were getting up to speed, the 1973 oil crisis hit, which really reduced global demand for oil carriers.
That sounds like it could have been the end.
It could have been.
For Hyundai.
Yeah.
So how did they survive?
Well, this is where the chaebol structure and the role of government support really came into play.
Okay.
Hyundai, they created their own shipping company, Hyundai Merchant Marine.
Okay.
Now it's HMM.
Right.
And they basically absorbed the ships that the original customers wouldn't take.
Oh, interesting.
Because of the oil crisis.
Right.
And then the South Korean government, They passed legislation requiring all crude oil deliveries to Korea to be carried on Korean-owned vessels.
Wow.
So that created a guaranteed domestic demand for Hyundai's tankers.
Wow, okay.
Plus, other parts of the Hyundai Group, like Hyundai Construction, Hyundai Motors, they also help streamline operations and improve efficiency in the shipyard.
So they basically used the strength of the entire conglomerate
Exactly.
to get through that.
It worked.
And then after Hyundai's success, other key balls jumped in, right?
They did.
And Daewoo, Samsung.
Daewoo took over a partially completed shipyard.
Hey.
And Samsung, they also started shipbuilding. They all followed similar strategies to Hyundai,
Like what?
seeking out and absorbing foreign technology.
Makes sense.
Daewoo also worked with Scotland's A&P Appledore,
Okay.
and Samsung partnered with a Danish shipbuilding firm. And even though there were more oil shocks in the late 70s and early 80s,
Right.
the Korean shipbuilding industry just kept growing.
Wow.
They became a major global player.
Incredible.
And then you have the 1985 Plaza Accord.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that from econ class.
It was a big deal.
What did it do exactly?
Well, it was an agreement between the U.S., Japan, West Germany, France, and the U.K. to depreciate the U.S. dollar relative to the Japanese yen and the German Deutschmark.
So what did that mean for Korea?
It meant that Japanese goods, including ships, became more expensive compared to Korean ships. Basically overnight.
Wow.
So that gave Korean shipbuilders a huge price advantage in the global market. Even though Japan had a bigger merchant fleet at the time, South Korea ended up surpassing Japan in new ship orders in 2000.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
They became this dominant force alongside Japan and then eventually China.
And now ships are one of Korea's top exports.
Yeah, right up there with cars and semiconductors.
It's amazing how quickly that happened.
It really is. From leftover facilities to a global powerhouse in just a few decades.
That's incredible.
It is.
So now let's talk about China.
Okay.
Because their dominance is just mind-blowing.
That is it.
58.1% market share in 2024, according to the BRS Group report.
Right.
Almost impossible to wrap your head around.
It's a huge number.
Yeah.
And what's even more impressive is that they're not just ahead, they're increasing the gap between themselves and other shipbuilding nations.
Oh.
They have 2,415 ships on order.
Oh, my goodness.
That's 161 million deadweight tons.
And just to be clear, deadweight tonnage is?
Yeah, it's basically the total weight a ship can carry. So cargo, fuel, crew, provisions, everything.
161 million tons is just
a lot.
A lot, yeah.
It's a huge capacity.
The report compared that to the U.S. Maritime Commission during World War II.
Right.
And it really puts things in perspective.
It does.
I mean, it's hard to imagine that scale.
Yeah, it's striking.
So China's current order book, in terms of deadweight tonnage, is bigger than the entire shipbuilding program of the U.S. Maritime Commission during World War II.
It is, yeah.
And that was 5,777 ships built between 1937 and 1945.
Just to put a number on it.
Unbelievable.
It really is.
So this growth has obviously hurt other shipbuilding countries.
It has.
Like South Korea, Japan, Europe.
Right. They've all seen a decline in their market share.
As China just keeps growing.
Exactly.
And one thing I found really interesting was the connection between China's merchant shipbuilding and their military shipbuilding.
Right. It's a big advantage for them.
Yeah. How so?
Well, many of their big shipbuilding companies, they're building both merchant ships for trade and warships for the Chinese Navy. So they're sharing technology, getting economies of scale in production.
Right.
And they have a strategic alignment that you wouldn't see in a purely commercial company.
And in fact, China's Navy is now bigger than the U.S. Navy.
It is, yeah.
In terms of the number of ships.
It's a major development.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So I read that the U.S. Navy is now looking to learn from South Korean shipyards.
They are.
Like about efficiency and cost effectiveness.
Yeah, especially from companies like Hyundai Heavy Industries. They're known for building both high-end military ships and commercial ships.
Right, right.
And they do it quickly.
Yeah, I saw that there's a big difference in construction times.
There is.
Like Korea can build a ship in 18 months.
Yeah, about that.
And the U.S. takes about 28 months.
For a comparable vessel, yeah.
It's a big gap.
It is.
But the U.S. can't just buy ships from Korea, can they?
No, there's a law from 1965 that prevents the U.S. Navy from directly buying new warships from foreign shipyards. But they can still learn from Korea's best practices.
Right.
And we are seeing more collaboration Well, for example, Hyundai Heavy Industries recently made a deal to allow U.S. Navy ships to get repairs in their South Korean shipyards.
Interesting.
It's strategic, you know?
So.
It keeps the U.S. fleet ready in the Asia-Pacific region.
Right.
They don't have to send ships back to America for every little thing.
Makes sense.
Yeah. There are also talks about training U.S. engineers with the help of Hyundai's workers.
So it's like they can't buy the ships.
Right.
But they're still trying to get that Korean efficiency.
Exactly. They're trying to learn.
Okay, so now let's switch gears and talk about India. I saw that their shipbuilding industry is now valued at $1.12 billion.
That's right, as of 2024.
Which is a big jump from $90 million in 2022.
It's significant growth, yeah.
So it seems like there's some momentum there.
Definitely, there's a lot of potential. India has a lot of maritime infrastructure.
Right.
Like 13 major ports, over 200 smaller ports, and about 30 shipyards, both public and private.
Okay.
The government is also trying to boost the industry.
How so?
Well, there's the Shipbuilding Financial Assistance Policy, which runs from 2016 to 2026, and the Sagarmala program, which is all about modernizing ports and infrastructure.
So it seems like it would be a good idea for India to invest in shipbuilding.
It would.
I mean, strategically speaking.
It's crucial for them.
Yeah, why?
Well, it would boost their economic growth.
Okay.
Create jobs, strengthen other industries.
Right.
It's also important for defense. They wouldn't have to rely on other countries for naval vessels.
Right.
Plus, it helps their coastal economy, their blue economy initiatives.
And they're really pushing for renewable energy.
Exactly.
Green shipping. So it all fits together.
It does.
But even with all that potential, India's shipbuilding industry still faces some big challenges, right?
They do.
Yeah, what are some of those?
Well, their ecosystem is a bit fragmented.
Right.
They have long construction times. Sometimes the quality isn't consistent. And they don't have that integrated maritime cluster that you see in other countries.
What do you mean by that?
Like where shipyards, suppliers, research institutions, they all work together closely.
Okay.
Plus, there's a lot of bureaucracy, which leads to delays.
So it's not as efficient as it could be.
Right. It lacks the synergy that you see in Korea or China.
Okay. And what about the cost of shipbuilding?
That's another big issue.
Yeah.
It's capital-intensive industry.
Right.
And Indian shipbuilders, they have a hard time getting cheap financing compared to other countries. They also have some infrastructure problems.
Okay, like what?
Their shipyards are often smaller, less automated than the top global shipbuilders.
Okay.
They might have outdated machinery, not enough dry dock capacity for big ships.
I see.
And port congestion can also cause problems.
Makes sense.
It disrupts their supply chains.
And then there's the issue of domestic demand.
Yeah, or the lack thereof.
Right. It seems strange that Indian companies wouldn't buy Indian ships.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But often, it's cheaper for them to buy secondhand ships from other countries.
Okay.
Those ships are often available more quickly than new ships built in India.
I see.
So Indian shipyards can't achieve economies of scale because they don't have enough orders.
Makes sense.
Plus, India's ship repair and maintenance system is underdeveloped.
Okay.
So a lot of Indian ship owners send their vessels to other countries for repairs.
Wow. Okay.
It's a lot of lost business for India.
So what can they do about all this?
Well, there are a few key strategies.
Okay.
First, they need to streamline the bureaucracy, create a single window clearance system for approvals and permits.
That would speed things up.
It would. They also need to encourage domestic demand, maybe with a Buy Indian policy for government and defense ships.
Interesting.
That would give Indian shipyards a more stable order book.
Right.
And they should integrate shipbuilding with renewable energy. Start building green vessels.
That's a growing market.
It is. They could also create a national maritime innovation hub to promote research and development.
Right.
And they need to expand financial assistance to include more private shipyards.
Got it.
And finally, they need to strengthen their position in global supply chains through trade agreements and co-production agreements.
So basically, a lot of work to do.
It's a big task, yeah.
But the potential is there.
It is, absolutely.
And then there's the technology and skills gap.
Right, that's a big one.
Yeah, India's behind Korea and China in that area.
They are, yeah.
Both in technology and in skilled labor. Their labor productivity is also lower.
It is.
So they need to invest in training.
Yeah, vocational training, collaborate with other countries for technology transfer, and encourage innovation in their shipyards.
So it's a multi-pronged approach.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's a difference between public and private shipyards.
Right. They have different focuses.
Yeah. How so?
Well, public shipyards mostly build naval vessels and they get government funding.
Okay.
Private shipyards build commercial ships.
Right.
And they face more market pressure. Those sectors have their own challenges.
I see.
In terms of efficiency, technology, and global competitiveness.
And on a more positive note,
Yeah.
India is starting to use more AI
That's right.
in their maritime sector.
It's exciting.
It is.
Yeah.
So how does that help shipbuilding?
Well, AI can be used for things like real-time monitoring of ships,
Okay.
optimizing routes for fuel efficiency, data-driven decision-making.
Right.
Ports like the new Vizinjam port are using AI for container management. And India is even developing its own autonomous vessel.
Really?
Yeah, it's called Swayat.
Sway it. Okay.
It's a big step towards advanced technologies.
It is.
And Cochin Shipyard, for example, they're incorporating digital technologies.
Okay.
And they've partnered with companies like Maersk to get even better.
So it's a positive development.
Definitely.
Okay. And what about standardizing hull forms?
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, it seems like it would save time and money,
It could.
but are there any downsides?
Well, standardizing hull forms could potentially reduce costs and production times,
Okay.
improve efficiency, streamline the supply chain.
Right.
But hull design is really complex. You have to balance hydrodynamic performance, cargo capacity, operational needs, regulations. Different ships have different purposes.
Right.
So a standard hull might not work for every ship.
Okay.
Plus, you'd have to adapt the shipyards to these standard designs.
Right.
Deal with regulations, technology limitations. It's not a simple solution.
So it's more complicated than it seems at first.
It is, yeah.
And then there's the use of CFD.
Right, computational fluid dynamics.
Right.
That's essential for optimizing hull forms.
Okay, how so?
Well, CFD simulations let engineers create virtual models of a ship's hull, and they can see how water flows around it in different conditions. So they can analyze the performance,
Okay.
find ways to reduce resistance, improve fuel efficiency,
Right.
all before they even build a real prototype.
Wow.
It saves a lot of time and money.
But are there any challenges with CFD?
Well, it requires a lot of computing power,
Okay.
expertise in hydrodynamics, and you need to create a good mesh.
A mesh.
Yeah, it's like a grid representing the hull's geometry.
Okay.
The accuracy of the simulation depends on the mesh.
Interesting.
So it's a powerful tool, but it's not a magic bullet.
Right. Right.
It has its own complexities.
So basically, shipbuilding is a really complex and constantly evolving landscape. And each of these countries has its own unique story.
Exactly.
Korea, China, India.
3 very different paths,
Yeah.
but all shaping global trade.
So to wrap this up,
Yeah.
we've seen how Korea went from almost nothing to a shipbuilding powerhouse
Right, in a few decades.
through partnerships, government support, and the cable system.
It's reversible.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then China, their rise has been more recent, but it's been huge.
Massive.
They've become the global leader
They have.
with state support and this integrated approach to shipbuilding.
Both merchant and military.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And then there's India with all its potential, but also facing a lot of challenges.
They have some hurdles to overcome.
But they're working on it.
They are, yeah.
So understanding all of this,
Yeah.
it really helps you understand global trade,
It does.
the balance of power, the role of technology.
Absolutely.
It's all connected.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it leaves you wondering, what's next?
Right. What's the future hold?